At New York City Hall, new Americans stood with small flags in their hands while the national argument over ICE raids, citizenship, and belonging grew sharper by the hour. The speaker beside them did not name Donald Trump. He did not have to. His target was a political machine built on fear of immigration, and his setting was America's birthday. There is a number in that room that explains the message he wanted the country to see. By the end, you will understand why one local speech reached far beyond New York. On July 4th at New York City Hall, Mayor Zohan Mamdani placed the argument inside America's oldest civic language. He spoke from the writing desk associated with George Washington beside 10 newly naturalized citizens holding miniature American flags. The setting mattered. This was not a campaign rally. It was an Independence Day address during America's 250th anniversary year, framed around citizenship, memory, and who gets to define belonging. As citizenship in 2018, he widened the message beyond the room. Donald Trump was not named directly, according to the record, but the contrast was unmistakable. One vision treated immigration as a threat to be contained through crackdowns and raids. Mamdani's vision treated dissent and immigrant belonging as part of the American project. The signal was sent from City Hall. The question was, who chose not to hear it? Mamdani's force in that moment came from a distinction Trump's immigration message rarely allows. He was not speaking about citizenship as an inherited assumption. He was speaking as someone who became an American in 2018 through the process the 10 people beside him had just completed. That made the stage more than symbolic. It turned the address into a transfer of civic power. The opposing argument says borders, laws, and enforcement define national sovereignty. That is true as far as it goes, but Mamdani's answer was that citizenship is not only a legal status, it is participation. It is the right to argue over the country's meaning after you have joined it. That is why his line about patriotism mattered. Love of country, in his framing, does not require silence. It does not require surrender. It can look like protest, dissent, and refusal. So when he condemned ICE as masked agents terrorizing our streets, it was not a detached policy critique. It was a direct challenge to the system deciding who belongs, who fears the state, and who gets to call that fear American. Start with the smallest object in the frame, a miniature American flag. Not a podium seal, not a campaign banner, not a row of elected officials waiting for applause. The visual center of Mamdani's 4th of July address was new citizens holding small flags at City Hall. And here is the mystery number 10. Source material from the address describes Mamdani standing beside 10 newly naturalized citizens. Other coverage cited 8. Either way, let that land for a second. The point of the image was not political power looking down at immigrants. It was new Americans standing inside the story themselves. That matters because the opposing view is not imaginary. A country does have borders. A government does have immigration law. Enforcement is part of sovereignty. But Mamdani's argument was aimed at what happens when enforcement becomes the whole definition of the nation. On the same anniversary stage, Trump's America 250 posture emphasized monuments, adversaries, and preservation. Mamdani emphasized arrival, dissent, and unfinished promises. Then he sharpened the frame. This was not just a local mayor's holiday message, it was a competing definition of America, delivered on the country's most symbolic weekend. Maria is 42, a home care aide in Queens, and at City Hall, she is not there as a symbol. She is there as someone who believed the next chapter of her life would finally feel settled. In her hand is the small flag. In her phone are the messages she has not opened yet, because citizenship changes her legal status, but it does not erase the fear around her. A cousin may still be waiting on paperwork. A coworker may be avoiding a subway transfer near an enforcement sighting. A neighbor may be deciding whether a sick child is worth the risk of leaving the apartment. The government is right that immigration law exists. No serious argument can pretend borders are meaningless. But Mamdani's point was about what happens when enforcement becomes a daily atmosphere instead of a legal process. Zoom out from Maria's seat at City Hall. The same fear moves through restaurant kitchens, delivery routes, construction sites, classrooms, care work, and small storefronts. It reaches employers who lose workers, tenants who miss rent, rent, and families who stop showing up. Even if you were born here, you live inside that network. And when it starts breaking, the damage does not stay at the border. 10 newly naturalized citizens stood beside Mamdani at City Hall. One mayor, one 4th of July address, and one argument about the country's $250 a year. Immigration is not just a border issue. In a city like New York, it is operating infrastructure. The strongest argument on the other side deserves to be stated clearly. Americans have a reasonable interest in secure borders, clear laws, reliable asylum processing, and confidence that immigration policy is not chaotic or arbitrary. A country cannot govern a system it refuses to define. But the question Mamdani raised was different. What happens when enforcement stops feeling like a legal process and starts functioning as ambient fear? That is where the loop begins. Raids create fear. Fear pushes people away from schools, courts, hospitals, and workplaces. Then families become harder to contact, workers become harder to protect, and neighborhoods become harder to govern safely. Think about what that means. The system claims it is restoring order, but its first effect is to make people disappear from the very institutions that create order. A parent who avoids a school meeting is less visible. A witness who avoids court is less useful. A worker who avoids reporting abuse is easier to exploit. And when immigrant labor supports kitchens, construction sites, delivery routes, care work, and small businesses, mass enforcement does not only target individuals. It disrupts schedules, service reliability, neighborhood trust, and the local tax base that depends on daily economic life continuing. That is the reframe. Order is not the same as fear. Mamdani's line cut to the premise underneath it all. If America becomes less with every person it welcomes, then growth is being treated as danger. But New York's daily life shows the opposite. The city does not function despite its immigrants. It functions through them. Maria is still holding her flag, and the question now reaches far beyond City Hall. You can see the same clash in Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, Houston, Phoenix, and border states. Raids, labor, citizenship, and belonging colliding block by block. The opposing concern is real. Laws need enforcement, but enforcement that makes neighbors vanish from schools, courts, hospitals, and workplaces weakens the order it claims to defend. A country afraid of newcomers is afraid of its future. Does patriotism require obedience, or can dissent be the highest form of love? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for sharp breakdowns of power and policy. Like to push this story to people who need it. Next, stay tuned for the next fight over America's 250th. Thanks for watching.